Let's go over why service providers don't offer a guarantee that you will not be sued over website accessibility after using their services. And to start off, accessible.org does not offer a guarantee. And at least not as of right now. It is something I've thought about, and I haven't completely dismissed the idea, but there are so many practical difficulties to offering a guarantee. And to set this up as the service provider, you can't be responsible for any changes that are made. So any code edits, any new content that is added, any new third party integrations that are uploaded or embedded, and then any pages or content outside of the scope of the services. And then that really gets at we need to have some sort of micromanagement arrangement in place because we need to remain in complete control of the website to ensure that no new accessibility issues are introduced. And that means that a subscription is necessary because this is going to be ongoing service work. And that also means that a client cannot change anything on the website because if they do, we're not responsible. But then we just really need to make sure that no changes are made without us knowing, because really all changes need to be filtered through us because we need to ensure that the website, again, remains WCAG conformant. So a scenario I can foresee is a client decides I need to add a new cookie banner, and they're not going to go through accessible.org, even though that's the arrangement, because they think, hey, it's my website. I'm going to make the changes that I want to. And I looked on the cookie banner's website and it said it's WCAG conformant. So I'm just going to make this change. And as the service provider, it's difficult to know if changes are made because then we're in a scenario where we're monitoring the website and we're trying to like screenshot the website and ensure that no code changes are made. So it's just very difficult practically when you play this out because as the service provider, if you're offering a guarantee, you're only going to offer that guarantee if you have the assurance that the website is going to remain WCAG conformant and you're going to need to be in control of all of the changes that are made. So then we get to the actual guarantee aspect of this. And one problem is that anyone can sue anyone for any reason. We can't stop that. So here's a potential scenario. Let's say that your website has already been looked at by a plaintiff's lawyer, and you, as the website owner, are already in their queue of uh, people to be sued. So it's coming up. No complaint has been filed yet, but it will be filed. And let's say it happens 2 months after they put you in their queue. Well, in that time, you had went ahead and you went with the service provider and you had your website audited and remediated, and now it's WCAG conformant for the entire scope. Well, then you're sued. Well, we can't stop that, right? Like that's just a scenario where it's completely outside of our control. The guarantee really gets out, did we provide the services that we said we would? So that's one difficulty. And then the other part that I wanted to bring up is the guarantee would have to be a dollar amount. It can't be for a defense because then you get into an entirely different subset of difficulties, practical difficulties. So it would have to be for a certain dollar amount that the guarantee would be. So as a service provider, our job is to put you in the best position possible. And so it's really just going to depend on what services you go through us for. So for an audit, this is going to be a thorough audit, formal evaluation. You're going to get back a report. It's going to have all of the accessibility issues on it. It's going to be an audit of your primary page layouts, user flows, pages with unique content, and or important pages. But one point on the audit is I keep mentioning scope, and that is because you're not going to have your entire website audited. It just doesn't make any sense practically or financially. So it's just going to be for a certain scope. And then you're going to take that audit and you're going to know what accessibility issues came up. And then you're going to apply that audit and what you've learned to your other pages and make those fixes. So a lot of times when you fix, let's say, a certain layout that is used over and over again, let's say it's a product page layout, you're going to take care of most of the accessibility issues that are consistent throughout that layout because the changes are going to apply site-wide for most websites. So that's the good part, but it's one important thing to know is that there's a limited scope, so it's not going to span your entire website. And then if you go through us for complete remediation, then you're going to have assurance that your website's going to be WCAG conformant for, again, that given scope. And when we remediate, we're also going to look over the remediation, because what happens is we have the audit. The auditor issues a report. The report has all of the accessibility issues. That report goes to the developer. The developer makes the fixes, and then we re-audit it to ensure that all of the fixes are in place. And then we can issue you documentation that your website is fully WCAG conformant. So this would be a conformance statement. It would also be a provider certification. And then if you wanted to, you could also go for the user testing service, and then you could also get documentation of the user testing. But this leads to my next point. If there are no accessibility issues left and you are sued, then what exactly are they suing over? Again, we've taken care of everything that we can on our end. If you are sued and it's like it's arbitrary, like it's just you were sued because, let's just go back to that scenario where you were in someone's queue and then you finally came up and then the complaint was filed. Again, that's really outside of our control, but it could easily be a situation. There's a likelihood, a strong possibility that a plaintiff's lawyer, if they mistakenly sue you, let's say it was a templated claim and they didn't actually look at your website. I think that's very rare nowadays, but it could happen. Let's just say it does happen. And I think there's a likelihood that the plaintiff's lawyer would actually drop or dismiss your case. So you would still have to go through the hassle. It would still be a very prudent move to hire a defense attorney. But if your website is fully WCAG conformant, it should be this should be a quick resolution to you being sued. So what I recommend is that you use training and education as insurance. This is your insurance. So if you require training for your digital team, this way you're not introducing new accessibility issues. So training for your employees, staff, contractors. If you're a small business, maybe it's just you and the developer you contract with. Maybe it's just you and your content manager, whoever it is. Whoever is working on your website, you want to make sure that they're aware of accessibility and that they are not introducing accessibility issues. This is going to be so much more cost efficient. There's going to be so much less not necessarily paperwork, but just going back and forth with the provider. This is really where you get your risk reduction and you remain WCAG conformant, and so you keep your risk extremely low. And then you also want to, along with that, you want to implement accessibility into your processes. So your development process, your content creation process, let's say it's your design process. Again, this gets at the different sizes of organizations. Sometimes it's a sole proprietor. Other times it's a Fortune 500 company. But either way, you need to make sure that accessibility is a part of your new changes so that you're not going through the trouble and the investment. You're not paying for all of these services, having them done, and then they're completed, but then you don't maintain that accessibility. So that's what this is getting at, is maintaining that accessibility. So if you want to guarantee that you won't be sued, the best possible position is to have your website be WCAG conformant and then maintain that conformance. The maintenance is the key. And you don't necessarily need a service provider for that, but you do need to make sure that your digital team is at least proficient and aware of accessibility and the accessibility issues that can lead to lawsuits. So for training, I do recommend my ADA compliance course. I do recommend the WCAG course. The ADA compliance course is going to make your team aware of the issues that are most likely to lead to a demand letter or a complaint being filed in court. It's going to prioritize all of those issues, give your team strategy. It's got everything that I would recommend in that course. And then the WCAG course is going to teach your team more broadly about the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which are the technical standards for accessibility. So if your team knows these standards inside and out, they can implement them into their processes, as well as what I talk about in the ADA compliance course. There is some overlap here, but the ADA compliance course and the WCAG course are complements to one another. It's not so much an overlap, because for the ADA compliance course, this is really teaching your team this is exactly what you need to do right now. The WCAG course is more teaching your team the technical standards. So it's, yes, WCAG conformance is a best practice, but how you get there very much impacts your level of risk as it stands and is ongoing until you make your website WCAG conformant. So I recommend both courses, but regardless of the courses, the key here is maintaining that accessibility. And for that, you want to make sure that you train your team. So a lot of website owners, they don't, they think that if they get the services, right, this is where the guarantee comes. They think that if they get the services, that everything should be fine. But part of the service is you are now at this point. Let's say it's WCAG 2.2 AA conformance. You've reached that peak. Now you have to maintain that peak. And so that's where the guarantee comes into play. And I can understand why website owners would want a guarantee and expect one, because they're going to service providers who are experts. They're paying thousands of dollars for these services. They want to know that this matter is done with, and it can be done with. You can significantly reduce your risk by maintaining that conformance, but you have to maintain the conformance. If you introduce new accessibility issues, then you're going to inevitably find yourself back to a situation where you have, let's just say, more than a few accessibility issues, which leads to more and more risk as the accessibility issues stack up. So it's not like if you just introduce one accessibility issue, it's like, oh, okay, well, that's a lawsuit. It doesn't work that way. But what happens over time is as the accessibility is unraveled, then more and more accessibility issues are introduced. And let's just say you have a website redesign, and then the redesign doesn't take into account accessibility, then things fall by the wayside. And that's where you end up in another situation where you are exposed to real risk of being sued because now you have accessibility issues on your website. So that's why you don't see the guarantees. And that's what's necessary for you as a website owner to have that extremely low level of risk and also confidence. You're not only at low risk, but you're going to be very confident knowing, hey, we've taken care of accessibility issues and we're on top of accessibility issues, or on top of accessibility. And if there is an accessibility issue introduced, it's going to be isolated. It's going to be something that maybe because we are in the practice of reviewing our accessibility that we're going to find eventually anyway. We're just not introducing accessibility issues as our website continues to remain online. So for that reason, you want to invest in training as a part of this. So just know that when you make any edits, when you make any content uploads, any changes to your websites, if it's a redesign, if it's a third-party embed, all of that needs to be filtered. That gets into the guarantee that talks about the control that I was getting at. And so you really don't want a situation where you're subject to an accessibility service provider being in control of your website. So because of that, it's just better if you take on the maintenance of accessibility. And so you could also have a subscription to, let's say, a real service, not just a scan, but an actual service. There could be a subscription component to this that could potentially make sense, but that also gets pricey. So you've got to weigh that. But the point here is that it's not only the actual service and getting to the WCAG conformance, it's the maintenance that's really, really important. And you can maintain accessibility. And once you reach that peak of WCAG 2.2 or 2.1 AA conformance, you're in really good shape. You're in excellent shape. You just have to make sure that you don't unravel that conformance by introducing new accessibility issues because you've invested in accessibility and then you stopped paying attention to accessibility once the services were completed. So I will link to the ADA compliance course as well as the WCAG course in the description. And then if there are any additional updates, I will include those in the description as well.